Okay, everybody set?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good afternoon, or still morning, I guess. My name is Larry Krantz, the Chief of Casselberry Police Department. As you're well aware of, this morning at about 3:50 a.m., we responded to an address on Crestview Drive, 730 Crestview Drive, in which an individual had called 911, and he alleged that he had committed a battery against his wife. And during that conversation, he made threatening statements, and he also alleged that he was armed with firearms and that he would hurt other individuals. Our officers were dispatched to the scene, and a few minutes later they arrived. We had 5 total officers from the Casselberry Police Department that did in fact respond to this incident. And during the ensuing confrontation, the individual fired a shotgun blast, several shotgun blasts, towards my officers, striking 2 of my officers. My officers returned fire. The investigation has now concluded or determined that 4 of the officers of the Casselberry Police Department did return fire and engage our subject. It is unknown at this time whether or not any of our officers' rounds did strike the suspect. However, he was ultimately found to be in the home deceased. At this point, the investigation is ongoing. As I stated earlier, we're unknown if it was a self-inflicted gunshot wound or if it was as a result of any of the rounds that our officers discharged. We'd like to identify the individual. The individual has been identified now as a James Lee Perrin, P-A-R-R-A-N. He is a white male, 65 years of age. This is Mr. Perrin. And we have some photos that we'll be able to provide to you after our press meeting here this morning. I'd also like to take the opportunity to express to our community the great work that our officers did in responding to this very dangerous, deadly situation. They were able to contain the individual, keep him there within the confines of his residence, and we were able to then get additional resources to come to the scene and then evacuate the neighboring residents to keep them from harm's way. And they also were able to retreat and take measures to evacuate, if you will, the injured officers who were on scene. They were closest to the residents, and our officers were able to engage the subject in order to safeguard our officers who were now somewhat close to this individual, and was able to get them to safety. The officers that were involved are Corporal Robert Judges. He's been with the Casselberry Police Department for 7.5 years, and he's also a member of the Seminole County City countywide SWAT team. We also had a Corporal Adam Phillips who was involved. He's been on the agency for almost 6 years. Ryan McIntosh, he's been on the department going almost 5 years. And Robert Blackwell, who's been on the department for about just shy of 1.5 years. Those were the 4 officers who were involved in the exchange of gunfire. Officer Adam Phillips and Officer Ryan McIntosh were the 2 officers that were injured as a result of this by the shotgun blast. Officer Phillips had the most injuries, all superficial wounds, but he did have injuries sustained to his arm and to his face, and the ballistic vest that he was wearing did also have a shotgun round impact the vest and was embedded in the vest. So the vest definitely prevented additional injury occurring to Officer Phillips. We had 1 other officer that was also involved, but he did not exchange any gunfire. He was, in fact, he was on scene. I can take any questions if you have any questions.
When was the last time Casselberry had an officer involved shooting or an officer shot? Do you recall?
It's been quite a few years, probably well over 10 years, last time any of this type of a situation did occur.
Do you know how many neighbors were evacuated, approximately?
Total number of residents?
Yeah, was it just the left side of the street? Do you know?
There were several residents across and next door, so maybe about 7 or so residences.
Is it known if the suspect, Perrin, had a
criminal history?
Many years ago in the early 90s, he had a history, but the charges were dismissed. Nothing violent. He had no violent history. We have not responded to this house for any violence. The most recent thing that we had, actually a few days ago, was about a noise complaint. But no violent calls to this house. There's been no history for him committing any types of violence. According to what we've been able to determine, it's out of the ordinary.
How long do you think it will be till you are able to determine whose gun fired the fatal shots?
That's going to be part of the investigation that's ongoing. It will be some time.
The condition of the two officers.
I'm sorry?
Any motive or reason for the shooting?
No, sir, we do not know at this time what that motive is.
The condition of the two officers, are they still in being treated or being released?
They have been treated and released.
How are they doing today, this afternoon, this evening?
The officers are doing very well. Superficial wounds, but they are doing very well. They're in good spirits. And the whole team of the Casselberry Police Department has surrounded them and taken care of them and supporting them. Again, I can't state enough how proud I am of how they responded to this very dangerous situation. They acted responsibly, they acted within their training, and they utilized the techniques that were necessary in this situation. Again, this individual, when our officers arrived, you know, it's somewhat of an unknown. We know that he's made threats. He alleged that he committed some act against his wife. We're not certain what we're going to be faced with when we arrive. And upon their arrival, as they tried to engage this individual in conversation, he immediately decided to lift up his shotgun and fire multiple rounds towards our officers. That was clearly a very dangerous, deadly situation, and our officers had to respond the way they did to protect themselves.
There were multiple agencies that responded. Did they respond after the suspect was found dead?
Well, I'm not sure exactly when they were found deceased in the house until such time as SWAT gets there. So all the resources from Central Florida law enforcement agencies that responded were responding immediately. And many of them were on scene well before we were even able to get the SWAT team together to enter the home. So it is unknown at this point at what point he died. We didn't find that out until obviously when SWAT team was able to gain entry into the home and found him deceased.
What is the condition of his wife?
She is okay.
Injured?
All indications are that she is okay and she's with family.
But she was not shot. Her injuries were not
Correct.
of that nature.
She was not shot, no.
It was more of a physical battery.
That's what he was alleging, that he had harmed his wife, yes.
What does the timeline look like? When did it, how much time passed between initial response and I guess the suspect was really going inside for the last time?
Relatively a short amount of time. Our officers responded within just a few minutes of the initial dispatch call. And this incident took place within a relatively short amount of time. At this point, I can't definitively tell you the exact minute, but it was not a very prolonged event.
Less than 30 minutes? From response to him going inside. I mean, how long was there?
Oh, it was
going on?
the encounter with the officers was very short. And as soon as the exchange of gunfire, they backed off. Again, they evacuated the officer who was up close and was injured, and were able to safeguard him. And then they started bringing in all the reinforcements and additional officers. So it wasn't until such time way after when we got the additional resources and SWAT team were we able to enter the home. But he never exited the home and came out into the roadway. He stayed in the front porch area, in the front door area.
Was his wife home during the shooting?
No.
So did she leave at some point?
She had departed prior to our arrival.
Chief, do you know if he was like ex-military? I heard that from numerous neighbors. He had some sort of military background.
It is my understanding that he, based on some information that was provided, he was a former Marine. But not certain of that service.
Chief, could you hold a picture of him up again, please? I will see. Thank you.
Chief, why did so many departments respond? You have departments from many different places. Why the massive response?
Anytime there's a law enforcement officer that's involved in a shooting incident where a shot's been fired and or officer's been injured, the law enforcement community comes together. We're a family. We're here to take care of not only the community, but each other. And we will respond to make sure that we're bringing the resources to the scene that we're going to be able to utilize to effectively manage the situation and to support those that are involved. And again, when these things are first happening, you got to understand there's a lot of unknowns. We're not certain exactly to the extent of the situation. So we want to make sure that we're there to support all the officers that are involved and help with whatever resources we may be able to bring.
Thanks.